Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about the up and coming fight that's going to be happening tomorrow. And I do apologize for not posting this a week earlier or early on in the week. I actually did not know that this fight was occurring until about a couple of days ago. And unfortunately, I had a little bit too much on my plate as of lately, to really post this video that early. But anyways, of course the fight that I'm going to be talking about is going to be the fight between the two welterweight champions at the current moment in time. And as you see right there, Jaron Ennis holds one of the titles, Stanionis holds the other. I don't know exactly which titles that they hold, but if I had to guess, Stanionis, by the looks of it, maybe the WBA title, and, Jaron Ennis maybe the IBF. And of course, when you take a look at that title held by that of Eddie Hearn in the middle, of course, that is the Ring Magazine title. So what that means is that this fight is pretty much for welterweight supremacy, who is going to be looked at as the best of the best of the welterweights at the current moment in time. I don't think that the welterweight division is anywhere near as talented as what it used to be. Of course, a lot of the champions there, you have Jaron Ennis and Stanionis. Those guys are definitely relatively talented, but when you talk about Mario Barrios, I mean, give me a break. It is what it is. I don't even know who has the other belt, if anyone else does even have the other belt. Maybe Jaron Ennis has the other belt for all I know. I have no idea. But the thing is that, when you talk about this fight right here, this pretty much is the best fight that could possibly happen. Of course, it also would have been interesting to see Virgil Ortiz stay at 147 and still be within this mix. Of course, the Stanionis and Virgil Ortiz fights were supposed to happen a couple of times, but for whatever reason, I believe either one or both sides had to pull out, or maybe it was just Virgil Ortiz. I don't know. But of course, once again, we're here for my final breakdown and my final fight prediction. And just to get straight to the point, about both of these fighters. Who do I personally believe is going to win this fight and why? And how do I think that it's going to happen? I believe more than likely that Jaron Ennis is probably going to win this fight. I think that, in my personal view, that he is the more talented of the two fighters. And Stanionis, in my view, is a relatively talented fighter, but I just don't know really what grade that I would label him. I'm not really 100% sure if I would label him as an A grade level fighter. I mean, maybe certain people would debate that, but I mean, it's kind of up to you. But the very interesting thing that I also will talk about is this, some of the channels that, I review, of course, that that you know of, when they all claim this stuff about Canelo Alvarez and Usyk fighting these quote unquote weak Caucasians or these weak European white boys, all of a sudden when it comes to Jaron Ennis and Stanionis, all of a sudden Stanionis, who of course, hails from that of Lithuania, I believe, all of a sudden Stanionis is super dangerous and one of the elite Caucasians or one of the elite white boys. So you have to be very, very careful about that, within that of some of the boxing media, especially with some of their favorite fighters, because, they'll say, oh, well, Canelo, when he fought guys like Caleb Plant or Callum Smith or Billy Joe Saunders, they were bums, they were nobodies, they were C grade level fighters, even though they were all proven fighters and actually had some names on their resume. But this guy right here, he doesn't really have anybody on his resume, although he's very talented. But apparently, this guy, he's a very dangerous fighter, an elite level fighter. So you have to watch out for that because there's going to be a lot of narratives from that, especially from guys like Dante's Boxing Nation or Aki TV, if we're going to be real about it. Some of the most racialized channels out there. But that being stated, I believe that Jaron Ennis is going to win the fight. Why do I personally believe that he's going to win the fight? I think that he has a little bit more within his game than that of a Stanionis. Now, Stanionis, in my view, is a relatively talented fighter. He's very talented at what he does. But that's the problem. He's very talented at what he does. I don't know if there's going to be another way for him to win if Jaron Ennis does not fall into some of his traps on the inside. Now, Stanionis is a very dangerous fighter, especially when he's coming forward and you allow him to get off. He's a guy that, pretty much, throws throughout the whole entire fight. But what Stanionis mainly likes to do is that he likes to come forward, work off the jab a little bit. He will change levels to a certain degree. But what he mainly wants you to do is that he wants you to land on his high guard, and then in the middle of those exchanges, he's going to throw whopping hooks or whopping punches right down the pipe, or within your range. But the question that I have is that what will happen if Jaron Ennis does not get close to that range? What will Stanionis be able to do? Will he do a double jab? Will he be able to work somehow within the mid range? Will he somehow be able to get closer? I don't know. But what I will state is this: is that Jaron Ennis does need to be careful within this fight because, of course, what we have seen with Jaron Ennis in the past is that sometimes he can be a little bit too greedy for certain shots in order to get the knockout or in order to hurt his opponent, or sometimes he just gets a little bit too lackadaisical. and it can end with him, getting hit with certain shots that he should not get hit with. Many people take a look at a great black American talented fighter like this and they immediately assume that he's a defensive or a slick master like that of a Floyd Mayweather Jr., and he's not. Jaron Ennis has not yet shown that he is someone like that of a Floyd or a Pernell Sweet Whitaker. And to be honest with you, most fighters, even if they are very talented black American fighters, they may somewhat have a quick feet or that slick style. They may not be greatly defensive fighters. And I've also stated this with Terrence Bud Crawford. Many people are brainwashed into believing that Terrence Bud Crawford, that just because he looks like Floyd Mayweather or just because he fights in a similar style to a certain degree that he's this defensive master. He's not. And you can see that against Gamboa. You can see that against Felix Diaz. You can see that against Aegis Kavalauskas. You can see that against Madrimov. You can see that against Sean Porter. You can see that against Kell Brook. Jaron Ennis is very similar. He's a great fighter. And, I'm sure that he can put on a great defensive performance when he needs to, but he's not a Floyd Mayweather. He's not a Pernell Sweet Whitaker. He needs to be very careful. Now, that being stated, he has looked better defensively the more seriously he ended up taking his assignment. Now, the last fight that I believe that he was in against that one Ukrainian fighter, that guy that was moving around a whole lot and moved very awkwardly, I think that more than likely that this is probably going to be an easier fight than that just because of the style. And I think that this is a type of a style that Jaron Ennis more than likely would like or is able to look good against. I think that more than likely how the fight is going to end up is that Jaron Ennis is, of course, going to start off with the jab. He's going to really try, and either fake or, get that lead hand, that stabbing jab to the body. And I think that is going to frustrate Stanionis in my view. And on top of that, you're talking about Jaron Ennis, as you can clearly see here, he's the bigger man of the two. Now, weight-wise, they might be the same, but reach and height-wise, Jaron Ennis is definitely the bigger fighter of the two. Now, maybe can it help Stanionis, for him to take advantage of that if he fights smaller within that shell? Maybe. But oftentimes a high guard like this, especially what we see, it oftentimes more than not can blind them when they have a constant high guard, and it can make them a little bit more stiff and a little bit less maneuverable. And when I take a look at Stanionis, he reminds me as one of those fighters. I think that he's going to be waiting for Jaron Ennis to come in and, try to get certain shots off on the inside. And I think that once that doesn't happen, I think that he's going to start getting a little bit more desperate, in my personal view. And that's where I think that Jaron Ennis will take advantage. I think that he's going to start off with a stabbing jab to the body and the jab up to the face, a double jab. And then I think that he's going to slowly, by round 2, round 3, round 4, maybe all those rounds, kind of throw that right hook or right hand to the body. And then I think he's going to start going up top. That's how you beat a fighter like this. You have to, use your angles. You have to use lateral foot movement and lateral movement and really try to frustrate these guys. And if they do get too close on the inside, don't try to play devil's advocate. Don't try to play Russian roulette. Try to really tie up this guy and really try to frustrate him, because if you don't do that, this guy can be very dangerous. He can hurt you. But if you do that, you are going to frustrate him, because I don't know if Stanionis really has many answers outside of that, just in my personal view. That's why I predict that Jaron Ennis more than likely that he's going to win the fight. I expect his feet to be quicker than Stanionis, and I expect him overall to use his feet and to use his lateral movement within this fight and to use the angles within the fight. I expect him to use a jab very early on, and I expect him overall to probe to the body very, very early. And I think that Stanionis is going to try a little bit, but I think that he's going to get a little bit desperate once he finds that he's going to be more down on the scorecards, or if Jaron Ennis starts racking up the points. And I do believe that that is going to happen, especially with Jaron Ennis having a 6-inch reach advantage over this guy. That's going to be a massive reach advantage. So once again, we'll see what ends up happening within this fight, but I believe that Stanionis more than likely is going to lose this by unanimous decision. Now, if Stanionis ended up winning, it wouldn't be the biggest upset that I've ever seen. But in my personal view, just in my view, Jaron Ennis deserves to be at least a 3-1 favorite, if not a 4-1 favorite. And I know that certain people may take a look at that as disrespectful to Stanionis. I'm sorry, I just don't see Stanionis being a major threat to Jaron Ennis. I just don't see it. I think that he's a little bit too limited in other certain ranges. I think that he's very good in the up-close range. I think that he's very good if you allow him to do what he's best at doing. But what I really want to see him do is handle a fighter that has quick feet and a guy that also has a multitude of game plans and can fight within a multitude of ranges. I want to see what he can do if Jaron Ennis takes his fight within the mid-range to the long range, and when he uses his angles and also uses his foot speed. That's what I want to see. So we'll see. Do I believe that he's going to be able to handle it very well? No, more than likely not. But I predict that Jaron Ennis will win this more than likely by unanimous decision. Now, if he won this by knockout, wouldn't be surprised at all. Wouldn't be surprised, but I'm going to predict it by unanimous decision because Stanionis, I do think, is very good at what he does. I think that at the least will make him survive this fight, but we'll see what happens. But I predict Jaron Ennis. I think that the maneuverability and the foot speed and the foot movement and the lateral movement combined with the power and the speed and the reach advantage and the size that he has, I just think that it's going to be too much for a fighter that I think, once again, is very good at what he does, but a fighter that, in my view, is not the most multidimensional fighter that I've ever seen. You know, he's not a Canelo, he's not a Crawford, he's not an Inoue, he's not a Usyk, he's not those guys, in my personal view, but it is what it is. But anyways, that pretty much is about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think. But I have Jaron Ennis winning this by unanimous decision. But peace out for now. That's pretty much about it. Thank you all so much for watching it, and we'll see what ends up happening tomorrow, where I'll also give my fight breakdown and my fight review.